In 1959, Honda sent a small team to Los Angeles with a motorcycle that weighed 143 pounds, cost $250, and produced 4.5 horsepower. The American motorcycle industry looked at it and shrugged. Within 15 years, America had forgotten it existed. But the rest of the world had not. India, Brazil, Japan, and China had built an entire transportation infrastructure around it. That same motorcycle has outsold the Toyota Corolla, the Volkswagen Beetle, and the Ford F-Series combined. It costs $900. Yet, the United States has spent 60 years finding reasons to ignore it, and managed to do it twice. This is the story of how the most produced motor vehicle in human history got rejected by Americans. Honda's first move was not to walk into a motorcycle dealership. It was to walk into Life magazine. The "You Meet the Nicest People on a Honda" campaign did not run in Cycle World or Motorcyclist. It went on families' coffee tables, the ones that commuters read on their lunch breaks, the ones that people bought who had genuinely never once thought about motorcycles. That was the entire strategy. Honda was not trying to convert existing riders. It was finding people who did not know they wanted one yet. It worked so fast, like handing out candies on a street. By 1963, Honda had sold over 100,000 Super Cubs in the United States in a single year. One model, 1 year. American motorcycle sales as a whole climbed from roughly 50,000 units annually to nearly 1.5 million. Honda had not taken a single customer from Harley or Triumph. It had manufactured an entirely new type of buyer, the kind of person who picked up a Super Cub the way they might pick up a lawnmower. Practical, affordable, no leather jacket required. The machine was simple enough to maintain, light enough to handle, cheap enough to replace. It was not the fastest thing on the road, sure, but it was the most useful. And it sold exactly on that basis. For a while, that was enough. By the late 1960s, the American market had made up its mind about something. Larger bikes, larger engines, larger statements. The displacement arms race was already underway, and the direction was unmistakable. Useful, it turned out, was not the thing the American market had decided it wanted long-term. It had decided it wanted something that announced itself, and a 143-pound commuter bike from Japan did not fit that brief. Honda followed the money. That is not a criticism, that is just what manufacturers do. America discovered motorcycles on a Super Cub, got comfortable, and then immediately went shopping for something with twice the engine and 3 times the attitude. Classic. Now here is the part that genuinely makes no sense if you think about it for more than 5 seconds. While the American market was busy upgrading to bigger bikes, the US military was shipping Super Cubs to the other side of the planet. Between 1967 and 1969, American soldiers introduced over 20,000 Super Cubs into Vietnam. Honda sold 750,000 units there in those 2 years, partly because the US military had put them in front of an entire country, and that country had looked at them and thought, yes, this is exactly what we need. America literally handed Vietnam the motorcycle, then flew home, then discontinued it. Vietnam did not discontinue it, neither did India, Brazil, Pakistan, Nigeria, or China. The rest of the world looked at the same bike America had just walked away from and made a completely different call. By 2017, 59 years after the Super Cub first rolled off the line, Honda had built 100 million of them. 100 million units of a single model. No car in history has ever done that. But if you think there is, and I missed something else, drop a comment below and I will read your message. So why did America never come back? 4 reasons. First, licensing. In the UK, Japan, Germany, and most of Asia, if you want to ride a motorcycle, you start on something 125cc or smaller. That is the law. The logic being that maybe you should figure out how a motorcycle works before you add enough power to kill yourself on the first corner. That one rule creates an entire market of entry-level riders who have no choice but to start small. The United States looked at that system and decided, no thanks. A first-time rider in America can walk into a dealership the same day they get their endorsement and walk out on a 1200cc cruiser. Nobody stops them. Nobody even raises an eyebrow. Which means there has never been a generation of American riders who started small, because the law never made them, and the dealership certainly was not going to suggest it. Second, the roads. The Hero Splendor, a motorcycle that outsells the entire US market 7-1, tops out at about 50 miles per hour. The Super Cub does 65 on a good day. American interstates are posted at 70. That is not a cultural problem, that is a physics problem. The commute most Americans picture, merging onto a highway at rush hour with a laptop bag on their back, is a situation where 65 miles per hour is not a cruising speed, it is a survival floor. The infrastructure made the small bike invisible before any rider had a chance to form an opinion about it. Third, identity. And this is the one that really does the damage. The Harley-Davidson ethos, displacement as freedom, weight as presence, sound as identity, is not a marketing campaign you can counter with a better marketing campaign. It is baked in. Baby boomers bought Harleys after 9/11 as a statement, and that generation had the money to make that statement very loudly for a very long time. A $900 commuter that does 60 miles per hour does not fit anywhere in that picture. The forums say it plainly. Small bike is just a scooter. And scooter? Bad. Nobody is arguing the engineering. Nobody is running the fuel economy numbers. It is tribal. And tribal is what moves markets. And lastly, the math. It costs nearly as much to certify and distribute a small bike in North America as a large one. The regulations, the compliance burden is roughly the same regardless of whether your engine is 97 cc or 1,000. The margin on a $900 bike after you pay all of that, plus shipping, plus dealer markup, is basically nothing. Now you probably noticed another model mentioned earlier, the Hero Splendor. When I said earlier that America managed to ignore the world's #1 motorcycle twice, this is what that means. In 2024, a single motorcycle model sold 3.6 million units in one country, not globally, in one country, 300,000 units per month, 10,000 units per day. The entire US motorcycle market, every brand, every model, every displacement class, moved 535,000 units in 2024. The Splendor, from India, outsells the American market 7-1, in one country, and most Americans have never even heard of it. Hero MotoCorp's total 2024 global sales were 5.9 million motorcycles. The Splendor alone accounts for more than 60% of that. Honda sold 19.6 million motorcycles globally in 2024, more than the entire US market buys in the time it takes to get through a work week. The global motorcycle market hit a record 61.8 million units in 2024. The US share was less than 1%. The country that ran the Nicest People campaign and drove US motorcycle sales from 50,000 to 1.5 million per year now accounts for less than 1% of the market that campaign helped create. Hero tried. They opened a US subsidiary, announced partnerships, spent years working on it, and shut everything down in 2019 without launching one model. The compliance costs alone would have pushed the price 30 to 50% above what it sells for in India. At that point, the bike that defines affordable transportation for 500 million people becomes just another mid-range option in a market that does not want it. Now here is where it gets genuinely embarrassing for the American market. In 2011, a British guy named Ed March bought a 1989 Honda C90, the direct predecessor to the Super Cub, for 150 British pounds. That is roughly $200. The bike was 22 years old when he bought it. He then rode it through Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Nepal, India, Iran, Turkey, and into Europe. 14,500 miles. One trip on a $200 motorcycle that was older than some of the countries he rode through. That was not even his main project. March has now put over 110,000 miles across 36 countries on the same class of bike. When asked about the C90's reliability, his answer was, "Every motorcycle breaks if you ride it far enough, but when the C90 goes wrong, you normally just lose about 5 miles per hour. That is the complete failure mode of the most ignored motorcycle in America. You lose 5 miles per hour." Now Japan Post. In 1967, Honda won a Japanese government postal delivery contract. The dedicated postal Super Cub entered service in 1971 and is still running today. Same platform, over 50 years. Japan's postal service did not switch to something newer, something faster, something more modern. They just kept ordering the same bike because it kept doing the job. For context, In 1971, America had already discontinued the Super Cub. Japan's post office was just getting started with it. And then the fuel numbers, because these deserve to be said out loud at least once. The Super Cub C125 gets between 120 and 150 miles per gallon in real-world conditions. The Honda Goldwing gets 40 miles per gallon and costs $28,000. At 10,000 miles a year, the Super Cub runs on roughly $230 to $290 of fuel annually. One owner documented $1,000 in total operating costs over 12,000 miles, fuel included, everything included. Honda tried again in 2019, 45 years away, and the big comeback strategy was putting it on the website. It sold quietly for 5 years. And then, between December 2025 and early 2026, the 2025 model simply disappeared from Honda's US website. No announcement, no press release. Honda's official response when asked, any potential return would depend on ongoing product planning and market considerations. That is a corporate sentence that means, we are done trying. As of the data pool for this video, there are 51 Honda Super Cubs listed for sale across the entire United States. 39 new, 12 used, 51 units nationwide for the most produced motor vehicle in human history. India sells that many Hero Splendors every 7 minutes. Today, the Honda Super Cub is currently on display at the American Honda Collection Hall in Torrance, California. Behind glass, a landmark of industrial design. 2 miles from a dealership that no longer sells it. The average American motorcycle costs between $10,000 and $12,000 and gets ridden about 3 weekends a year. The most produced motor vehicle in human history costs $900, gets 140 miles per tank, and has been delivering Japan's mail without interruption for over 50 years. Those two things exist at the same time. Japan's postal service trusted it for 5 decades. Ed March put 110,000 miles across 36 countries on one. And Honda, after 66 years of selling motorcycles in America, quietly removed it from the website without a press release. The world's #1 motorcycle died in America twice. The second time, nobody noticed. If you rode one during that first run, or if you are one of the 51 people who currently own one, drop it in the comments. That history is worth preserving.